The courtroom was silent, too silent. It was the kind of silence that carried weight, thick and heavy, pressing down on every person inside. The judge, an older white man with deep lines on his face, studied the black woman standing in the defendant's chair. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't crying. She didn't even look afraid. Her brown eyes, sharp as a blade, swept across the room, locking onto each of the officers who had arrested her. 3 men in uniform. 3 men who had dragged her out of her car, slammed her to the ground, and told the world she was a drug dealer, a criminal, a menace to society. The lead prosecutor stood, straightening his tie. His confidence dripped off him like sweat in the summer heat. "Your Honor," he said, voice ringing through the room, "we have undeniable evidence that this woman, Charlene Brooks, is a drug trafficker. We have footage of her exchanging money for cocaine. We have eyewitness accounts. And most importantly," he turned, pointing directly at her, "we have the officers who caught her in the act." The officers nodded. One of them, Detective Owens, smirked just enough for her to notice. She should have been scared. She should have been begging for mercy. Instead, Charlene did something that sent chills through the entire courtroom. She laughed. It was low at first, a chuckle that barely made it past her lips. Then, it grew, rising like a storm, filling the space with a sharp, knowing edge. The prosecutor frowned. The judge blinked. The officers stiffened. Charlene leaned forward, placing both hands on the wooden table before her. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice smooth and steady. "Because the woman you just framed is a federal agent." The courtroom exploded. Gasps. Murmurs. Someone dropped a pen, and it clattered against the floor. The officers' faces twisted in shock, their confidence melting into something else. Fear. Real, undeniable fear. And then, order. The judge banged his gavel so hard it sounded like a gunshot. The noise snapped everyone back into place, but the damage was done. Charlene crossed her arms, watching as the men who had set her up now sat frozen, their skin paling by the second. They had no idea who they were messing with. But before the truth could come out, before the courtroom could react further, something even worse happened. The doors burst open. A man rushed in, sweat dripping down his forehead, eyes wide with panic. He whispered something into the prosecutor's ear. Whatever he said made the prosecutor go stiff. Then, as if the ground beneath them had cracked open, the entire case flipped on its head. Everything started to fall apart. A few days earlier, Charlene Brooks had woken up just like any other day. She stretched, her bones popping in a way that reminded her she wasn't 20 anymore, then pulled herself out of bed. Morning sun streamed through her apartment window, warming the dark wooden floors. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She reached for it, yawning as she checked the message. 9:02 a.m. Chief Daniels, we need you in today. Something big is happening. Charlene sighed. So much for her day off. She showered, got dressed, and grabbed a coffee from the shop downstairs before heading to the DEA field office. The drive was smooth, no traffic, no problems. Just the way she liked it. But something felt off the moment she stepped inside the building. People were tense. Conversations were hushed. Agents huddled together, whispering in low voices. Charlene spotted her partner, Jason Carter, by the coffee machine. He was a tall, broad-shouldered white guy with a sharp jawline and a love for terrible dad jokes. "What's going on?" she asked, pouring herself another coffee. Jason sipped his own, his face grim. "You remember those dirty cops we've been looking into?" Charlene's grip on her cup tightened. "The ones running drugs through the city?" Jason nodded. "Yeah. Word is, they just found a new scapegoat to take the fall." Charlene's stomach clenched. "Who?" Jason hesitated. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "You." She laughed, because it was ridiculous. A joke, obviously. But Jason didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. Her heart pounded in her chest. "Tell me you're kidding." Jason shook his head. "They're setting you up, Char. I don't know how, I don't know why, but they're moving fast. You need to be careful." Charlene's pulse pounded in her ears. She was careful. Always. She was a black woman in law enforcement. Careful was the only way to survive. So how the hell had this happened? She didn't have time to figure it out. Not when the walls were already closing in. By the time she left the office, she could feel it in the air, the shift. Like something big was about to happen. She just didn't know it would happen that night. Charlene was driving home when she saw the flashing lights in her rearview mirror. At first, She thought it was nothing. Just routine. A traffic stop. Then, she saw the officers stepping out of the car. 3 of them. And she knew. This wasn't routine. This was it. She barely had time to breathe before they were at her door, guns drawn. Step out of the car, one of them barked. Charlene kept her hands where they could see them. What's this about? You know damn well what it's about, another one sneered. Get out. She moved slowly, keeping her expression neutral. You sure you want to do this? That made one of them pause. But only for a second. Before she could say another word, one of the officers grabbed her arm, yanking her forward. Another shoved her against the hood of her car. She didn't resist. Didn't fight. Because she knew. They wanted her to. Found something, one of them suddenly called. She turned her head just in time to see one of the officers, Detective Owens, holding up a bag of cocaine. A bag she had never seen before in her life. Her stomach dropped. Looks like we got ourselves a dealer. Owens smirked, waving the bag for the dashcam to catch. Charlene felt the rage burn in her chest, but she swallowed it down. This was happening. This was real. They were framing her. And there wasn't a damn thing she could do about it. As the cold metal of the handcuffs snapped around her wrists, she heard Owens chuckle. Bet you thought you were untouchable, huh? He whispered. Charlene didn't answer. Because she knew something he didn't. Something that was going to turn this entire case upside down. Back in the courtroom, Detective Owens felt his world crumbling. The woman they had set up, the woman they had paraded around as a criminal, was not just some nobody. She was DEA. And suddenly, everything was about to go horribly, horribly wrong for them. And then, bam, the courtroom doors swung open. The entire case was about to explode. The courtroom tensed as the doors slammed against the walls. Everyone turned toward the entrance, eyes wide, breath held. A man in a dark suit strode in, his face unreadable, his presence commanding. He moved with a purpose, his polished shoes clicking against the floor with every step. Charlene didn't flinch. She kept her chin high, her expression unreadable, but inside, her heart pounded like a war drum. She knew him. Special Agent Daniel Reeds. DEA Internal Affairs. The prosecutor's face paled. The 3 officers who had framed her shifted in their seats, stiffening like statues. Owens clenched his jaw, his eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. Reeds walked straight to the judge and handed him a folder. Your Honor, he said, voice calm but firm. I strongly suggest you read this before proceeding any further. The judge's brows knitted together as he flipped open the folder. His eyes scanned the pages, moving quickly, too quickly. The color drained from his face. Something was in that file. Something big. Something dangerous. The prosecutor turned, hissing in a whisper, What is this? Reeds didn't answer. Instead, he turned toward Charlene, nodding just slightly. She didn't nod back. She didn't need to. The trap was already set. And then, bang, the judge slammed his gavel against the desk. This court is in recess. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The prosecutor's mouth opened like he wanted to argue, but nothing came out. The officers, now looking visibly nervous, exchanged glances. Charlene smiled, just a little. It was happening. A few nights before her arrest. Charlene sat in her car, parked just outside a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. The neon lights buzzed above, flickering in and out like they could barely hold on. She had been tailing Detective Owens for weeks, knowing he was up to something. But until now, she hadn't caught him in the act. Tonight was different. She watched as Owens and his 2 partners walked out of the motel. A man trailed behind them, nervous, shifty, clutching a duffel bag. Charlene adjusted the camera on her phone, zooming in. Cash. A lot of it. She wasn't stupid. She knew exactly what this was. A drug deal, right under the department's nose. Charlene exhaled slowly. She had enough to bring this to her supervisors, but she needed more. Something solid. And then, as if fate had decided to gift her the perfect moment, Owens turned toward his partners and smirked. She's next, he said. Charlene froze. His partner, a bald man named O'Leary, chuckled. You sure? That's risky, man. Owens snorted. She's smart, yeah? But at the end of the day, she's just another black woman with a badge. Nobody's going to question it when we pin it on her. Charlene's grip on the steering wheel tightened. They were planning this. They were going to frame her. And she had them on tape. Her stomach twisted, but she forced herself to stay calm. She needed to get this footage to the right people before they made their move. But she never got the chance. Back in the present, In the courtroom hallway, Charlene sat in a small waiting area just outside the courtroom, her hands clasped together. Jason Carter, her partner, sat next to her. "You good?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. She wasn't sure if she was. "I knew they were dirty," she muttered. "I just didn't think they'd be this bold." Jason leaned back, arms crossed. "They got cocky. Thought they could take you out before you could do anything about it." Charlene shook her head, a humorless chuckle escaping her lips. "Yeah, well, they picked the wrong woman." Jason smirked. "Damn right." Before they could say more, the courtroom doors opened again. The prosecutor stormed out, face flushed with frustration. Behind him, the three corrupt officers followed. Their arrogance was gone. Their shoulders hunched. Owens clenched his jaw so tight, Charlene swore she could hear his teeth grinding. He shot her a glare, but she didn't flinch. The game was over. But just as she thought she had won, boom, a loud crash echoed from down the hallway. Shouts followed. Charlene and Jason jumped to their feet. Something was happening. Something big. And before Charlene could react, a gunshot rang out. The night before her court appearance, Charlene sat in a dark room, a laptop open in front of her. The video footage of Owen's drug deal played on a loop. Her hands hovered over the keyboard. This was it. This was the proof. All she had to do was send it. But just as she clicked the button to email the footage, her screen glitched. Charlene frowned. Then, the power cut out. The entire apartment went black. A second later, her front door burst open. Charlene reached for her gun. Too late. A heavy weight slammed into her, knocking her chair over. Pain exploded in her ribs as she hit the ground. Footsteps. Voices. And then, a bag over her head. Darkness. Nothing but darkness. Back in the courtroom hallway, Charlene sprinted toward the source of the gunshot. A man was on the ground, clutching his leg. Blood pooled around him. Charlene's eyes darted up and locked onto a figure running down the hall. Detective Owens. Still trying to escape. Still trying to get away with everything. Not this time. Charlene took off after him, her feet pounding against the floor. She was going to catch him, and when she did, he was going to pay. Charlene sprinted down the hallway, her breath steady, her mind locked in. Owens was fast, but she was faster. He shoved past people, knocking over a woman holding a stack of papers. A security guard yelled for him to stop, but he didn't. Charlene's legs burned as she closed the distance. Owens was running blind, desperate. He didn't have a plan. He had only one thought in his mind. Escape. Not today. Ahead, the courthouse exit loomed. If he got outside, things would get messy. The media was already there. Cameras. Reporters. Chaos. Owens could blend into the crowd, disappear. Charlene pushed harder. Just as Owens reached for the door, she tackled him. They hit the ground hard. He let out a grunt, twisting beneath her, trying to break free. "Get off me," he snarled, elbowing her ribs. Charlene gritted her teeth against the pain and grabbed his arm, twisting it behind his back. Owens screamed. "Stay down," she ordered. "You're gonna regret this," he spat. "You don't know who you're messing with." Charlene leaned closer, her voice calm. "Oh, I know exactly who I'm messing with, Owens. That's why you're in cuffs." With a sharp yank, she secured his wrists in the very same handcuffs he had put on her days ago. Jason arrived a second later, out of breath. "Damn, Char. You could have saved some of the fun for me." Charlene smirked. "You're too slow." The security guards finally caught up, pulling Owens to his feet. He thrashed like a wild animal. "This is a setup. You hear me? This is all." Charlene cut him off. "Yeah, that's funny. That's exactly what I said when you framed me." For the first time since this all started, fear flickered in his eyes. Because deep down he knew. It was over. 12 hours earlier. Charlene sat in the back of a police van, her hands shackled to the floor. The cold metal of the cuffs bit into her wrists. The officers who had arrested her were in the front, laughing. "You think she's still acting tough?" One of them chuckled. "Doesn't matter," another one replied. "Once she's locked up, she's done. Nobody's gonna believe a black woman over 3 cops." Charlene stayed silent. Not because she was scared, because she was listening. They were too arrogant to be careful. They thought she was already buried. "Man, Owens really played this smart," one said. "Planted the drugs, got the footage. It's airtight." Charlene stared at the floor. Airtight. They really thought they had covered every angle. But they had made a mistake. Because Charlene hadn't been working alone. Back in the present, in an interrogation room, Owens sat at a metal table, his hands cuffed, his face pale. He glared at the one-way mirror, knowing people were watching. Charlene stood outside, watching him through the glass. Jason stood beside her. "You think he'll talk?" Jason asked. Charlene exhaled. "He will." Jason raised a brow. "And what makes you so sure?" Charlene turned to him, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Because we're about to make him an offer he can't refuse." 3 days earlier, Charlene met with a man in a dimly lit parking garage. He was nervous, shifting from foot to foot, rubbing his hands together. "You're asking me to go against cops," he whispered. "That's suicide." Charlene crossed her arms. "You work for them. You know they don't care about you. The second things go south, they'll throw you under the bus." The man hesitated. Charlene pressed on. "Help me, and I can protect you." Silence. Then, finally, "All right," he muttered. "But if I do this, I need to disappear after." Charlene nodded. "Deal." Back in the interrogation room, the door creaked open. Charlene walked in, setting a thick folder on the table. Owens didn't look at it. She sat across from him. "We have a lot to talk about." Owens scoffed. "I'm not saying a word." Charlene flipped the folder open. The first page was a list of transactions, his transactions. The second page was an email chain. Owens had thought he was careful. He wasn't. The third page. Charlene slid it toward him. It was a picture of the man she had met in the parking garage. Owens went stiff. Charlene leaned in. "Your partner flipped on you. Gave us everything." Owens' nostrils flared. "You're lying." Charlene pulled out her phone, hit play. Owens' own voice filled the room. "She's just another black woman with a badge. Nobody's going to question it when we pin it on her." His face turned white. Jason walked in, leaning against the wall. "Tough break, man." Owens swallowed hard. Charlene tilted her head. "You're going to prison either way. But if you talk, maybe we can work something out." Owens clenched his fists. For the first time in his life, he was powerless. And Charlene? She had all the power now. Hours later, Charlene stepped outside, the fresh air filling her lungs. The courthouse was behind her. The nightmare was over. Jason joined her. "So what now?" Charlene smiled. "Now? We finish this." But just as she thought things were calming down, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. The back door opened. Charlene's blood ran cold. Because the person inside wasn't supposed to be there. Not at all. And then, the engine roared, and the SUV sped off, taking someone with them. Someone important. And just like that, the real game began. Charlene's heart pounded as the black SUV screeched down the street, its tires leaving dark streaks on the pavement. People on the sidewalk jumped back, startled by the sudden movement. But Charlene had no time to react to them. Her eyes locked on the disappearing vehicle. Someone had just been taken, and she had a sick feeling she knew who it was. Jason cursed beside her. They just snatched him right in front of the damn courthouse. Charlene didn't respond. She was already moving. She sprinted to the nearest parked car, an unmarked police vehicle. She yanked the door open, not caring whose it was. Jason didn't ask questions. He jumped into the passenger seat as she slammed her foot on the gas. The car lurched forward, tires screeching as she took off down the street. The SUV was already weaving through traffic, moving fast. Too fast. Charlene clenched her jaw. Not this time. She gripped the wheel and pushed the car harder, her pulse a steady drum in her ears. "Who do you think they grabbed?" Jason asked, bracing himself as she cut between two cars. Charlene's mind raced. "It has to be Reed's." Jason swore under his breath. "You think they figured out he was working with us?" Charlene nodded, jaw tight. "They're panicking. Owens is in custody, and their whole operation is crumbling. Taking Reed's is their way of stalling." Jason checked his gun. If they took him, it means they need him alive. Otherwise, they would have done it in the courthouse parking lot. Charlene said nothing. She knew Jason was right, but that didn't make her feel any better. Up ahead, the SUV took a sharp left down a side street. Charlene didn't hesitate. She yanked the wheel, barely missing a parked motorcycle. The unmarked car skidded onto the narrow road. Then, gunfire. Bullets cracked against the windshield, spiderwebbing the glass. Jason ducked. "Shit, they're shooting at us." Charlene stayed focused. She didn't brake. She didn't swerve. She kept driving. The SUV was only a few car lengths ahead now. The passenger window of the SUV rolled down, and a man leaned out, a gun flashing in his grip. Another round of shots. Charlene jerked the wheel at the last second, avoiding a direct hit. Jason raised his gun, aiming out the window. Hold it steady. Charlene's grip tightened on the wheel. Make it count, Jason. Jason exhaled sharply, locked onto his target, and bang! The gunman in the SUV jerked backward, dropping his weapon. Charlene didn't waste time. She floored it, ramming the back of the SUV. Metal crunched. The other car swerved wildly, its driver struggling to control it. Charlene prepared to ram them again. But then, the SUV suddenly braked hard. Charlene had no time to react. She slammed the brakes, but it was too late. The unmarked car crashed into the back of the SUV. The impact sent a shockwave through her body. The airbag exploded in her face. Everything blurred. For a second, she couldn't hear anything except a loud ringing. Then, Jason's voice cut through the haze. Char, we gotta move. Charlene blinked. The SUV's doors had already swung open. The kidnappers were spilling out, dragging Reeds with them. They were trying to escape on foot. Charlene shoved the airbag away and kicked open her door. Her gun was in her hand before she even realized she had grabbed it. The kidnappers disappeared into an alleyway. Charlene took off after them. Jason was right behind her. 30 minutes earlier, Reeds had been sitting in a small courthouse office, reviewing files. The case against Owens and his crew was solid. The evidence was airtight. But there was something else in the files that made his stomach turn. Something bigger than corrupt cops. Before he could dig deeper, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He frowned and answered. Reeds. A deep voice spoke on the other end. We know what you found. Reeds went still. The voice continued. You have 30 minutes to walk out of the courthouse and hand over the files. If you don't, a pause. We'll take you instead. Click. The line went dead. Reeds stood, heart pounding. He had to warn Charlene. But before he could reach for his phone again, the door burst open, and everything went black. Back in the present, Charlene sprinted into the alleyway, her gun raised. The kidnappers were already shoving Reeds into the back of another car. Charlene fired. Bang! One of the kidnappers dropped. Jason took out another. But the driver, the last one standing, managed to throw Reeds into the car and jump behind the wheel. The engine roared. The tires screeched. The car shot forward. Charlene sprinted after it, but it was useless. The car sped away, disappearing into the city. Charlene skidded to a stop, her chest heaving. Reeds was gone. Jason cursed under his breath. Damn it. Charlene clenched her fists, her pulse still racing. We're not done yet. Jason glanced at her. We don't even know where they're taking him. Charlene's eyes narrowed. Oh, we will, she muttered. And when we find them. She cocked her gun. We end this. Charlene paced back and forth in the dimly lit safe house, her fingers twitching at her side. The room smelled of stale coffee and dust, a clear sign that this place hadn't been used in a while. Jason sat at the table, scrolling through his laptop, searching for anything, any lead, that would tell them where Reeds had been taken. Charlene's jaw was tight. They had been so close. She had Owens in custody. The case was coming together. And then, they took Reeds. She exhaled sharply, running a hand over her face. We need a damn lead. Jason nodded. I'm working on it. These guys aren't ghosts. They have to be working for someone bigger. Charlene knew he was right. Owens and his corrupt crew were just foot soldiers. Someone else was calling the shots. But who? And why did they want Reeds? Her phone vibrated. She snatched it off the table and answered without hesitation. Charlene Brooks, a distorted voice said. She tensed. Who is this? The voice chuckled. You're asking the wrong question, Agent Brooks. You should be asking, what do I want? Charlene gritted her teeth. Fine. What do you want? A pause. Then, you have something that belongs to me. Charlene's stomach clenched. The files. Her fingers tightened around the phone. What files? She asked, playing dumb. The voice chuckled again. Let's not waste time. You know exactly what I'm talking about. The ones Reeds was looking at before we took him. Charlene's heart pounded. This wasn't just about Owens. These files had something bigger in them. Something worth kidnapping a DEA agent over. The voice continued. You give us the files, we give you Reeds. Simple trade. Charlene's grip on the phone tightened. Where's the proof of life? Silence. Then, a rustling sound. And a weak, muffled voice. Brooks, don't. A sharp grunt. A thud. Then, the distorted voice came back. He's alive. For now. Charlene swallowed the lump in her throat. She needed to stall. Where's the trade happening? The voice exhaled. An abandoned warehouse on the east side of the city. Midnight. You bring the files, you get your man. Click. The line went dead. Jason looked up. Who was that? Charlene lowered the phone, her pulse pounding. We just got our lead. 10 hours earlier. Reeds had woken up to a splitting headache. His wrists were tied behind his back, the rough rope biting into his skin. His head throbbed from the blow he'd taken earlier. He blinked through the haze, his vision adjusting to the dim light. A warehouse. Metal walls. The faint hum of electricity. And then, voices. He kept his breathing steady, listening. They're gonna come for him. A gruff voice. Another man scoffed. Of course they are. That's the whole point. Footsteps. Closer now. Reed shut his eyes just in time before someone grabbed his face, forcing his head up. You awake, Fed? Reeds blinked, looking into the cold, pale eyes of a man he had never seen before. Not a cop. Someone higher up. Reeds forced a smirk. What? No hospitality. You could have at least offered me a drink. The man didn't laugh. I'll tell you what I'm going to offer you instead. He pulled a chair close and leaned in. You're going to tell me what you know. Reed's smirk didn't waver. And if I don't? The man's lips curled into a slow, cruel smile. Then we start breaking things. Back in the safe house. Charlene ran a hand through her hair. Midnight. That gives us less than 6 hours. Jason stood. We're not giving them those files. Charlene nodded. Of course not. But we are going to that warehouse. Jason frowned. This has trap written all over it. Charlene's eyes darkened. I don't care. Jason sighed. All right. What's the plan? Charlene's mind was already working, piecing it together. We bring a fake drive. We make the trade, but the second we get Reeds, we take these bastards down. Jason raised a brow. You realize they'll have an army waiting for us. Charlene smirked. Then we better come prepared. Jason let out a slow whistle. Damn, Char, remind me never to get on your bad side. She grabbed her gear. We leave in 5. 11:58 p.m., outside the warehouse. The night air was thick, heavy with tension. Charlene crouched behind a stack of abandoned crates, peering through the scope of her rifle. She counted at least 8 armed men. Jason's voice crackled in her earpiece. Ready when you are. Charlene exhaled. Let's do this. She stood, walking out into the open, the fake flash drive clenched in her fist. A man, the same one who had spoken to her on the phone, stepped forward. A twisted grin stretched across his face. Agent Brooks. Right on time. Charlene's face was blank. Where's Reeds? The man snapped his fingers. 2 men emerged from the shadows, dragging Reeds with them. His face was bloodied, his right eye swollen shut, but he was alive. Charlene's jaw clenched. She held up the flash drive. Let him go first. The man smirked. Nice try. Charlene didn't blink. You kill him, you don't get the files. The man studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. The 2 men shoved Reeds forward. He stumbled, falling to his knees. Charlene reached for him. But just as her fingers grazed his arm, the man pulled a gun and aimed it right at her head. Charlene barely had time to react before. Bang! A single shot rang through the night. And then, everything erupted into chaos. The gunshot echoed through the night, splitting the silence like a knife. Charlene didn't flinch. She moved. Fast. Before the shooter could fire again, she lunged, grabbing Reeds and yanking him behind a stack of crates just as bullets tore through the air. Geo, she shouted. Jason was already moving, firing from his position on the rooftop. His first shot took down one of the armed men instantly. Then, all hell broke loose. Gunfire rained from every direction. The warehouse yard became a battlefield, bullets ricocheting off metal shipping containers. Charlene shoved Reeds down. Stay low. Reeds coughed, blood on his lips. You really know how to make an entrance. Charlene smirked, but she didn't have time for jokes. She peeked around the crates, 3 men advancing. She raised her gun. Bang! Bang! The first one dropped. The second stumbled, clutching his leg. The third, charging. Charlene spun, her boot catching him across the face. He staggered, dropping his weapon. She grabbed him by the collar, using his weight against him, flipping him onto the concrete with a sickening crack. Jason's voice crackled in her earpiece. More incoming, 3 o'clock. Charlene grabbed Reeds, dragging him toward cover. We need an exit. Jason's voice came again. I got you. Stand by. A second later. Boom. An explosion rocked the warehouse yard, fire bursting from a parked van near the gate. Charlene shielded Reeds as the shockwave blew dust, and debris into the air. Jason's laughter rang through the comms. Told you I'd come prepared. Charlene smirked. Remind me to never leave you alone with explosives again. Reeds groaned. Can we focus on getting out before I bleed to death? Charlene pulled him up. Let's move. They sprinted toward the gap Jason's explosion had created. More gunmen poured into the yard, shouting orders, opening fire. Charlene returned fire, ducking behind an overturned crate. Jason covered them from the rooftop, his rifle picking off enemies one by one. But there were too many. Charlene's stomach twisted. They needed to end this, now. Her eyes scanned the yard, searching for something, anything, that could turn the tide. Then she saw it. A gas line, running along the side of the warehouse. And next to it, a stack of propane tanks. Charlene exhaled. Jason, you see what I see? Jason followed her gaze. A slow, wicked grin spread across his face. Oh yeah. Charlene grabbed Reeds, pulling him farther back. Take the shot. Jason didn't hesitate. Bang. The bullet struck the propane tank. Boom. The explosion ripped through the yard, a fireball consuming everything in its path. The force knocked the gunmen off their feet. The shockwave sent crates and debris flying. Charlene shielded Reeds as the heat rushed past them. When the smoke cleared, the battlefield was silent. Most of the gunmen were either unconscious or scrambling to escape. Charlene helped Reeds to his feet. Jason was already running down from the rooftop, gun still in hand. Reeds coughed, grimacing. Remind me never to get kidnapped again. Charlene smirked. Deal. Jason joined them, scanning the area. Looks like we got him. But Charlene wasn't convinced. Something still felt off. Then, a slow clap broke the silence. Charlene spun, gun raised. A lone figure stepped through the smoke. The man from the phone call. The mastermind. The one pulling the strings. His suit was spotless despite the destruction around him. His face? Amused. He stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets. Well played, Agent Brooks. Charlene didn't lower her gun. You're not walking out of here. The man smiled. Oh, I think I am. Charlene's grip tightened. Give me one good reason not to put you down right now. The man's smirk didn't waver. Then, he nodded toward something behind her. Charlene stiffened. Slowly, she turned her head. Her stomach dropped. Behind them, a sniper, positioned on a distant rooftop. Rifle aimed directly at Jason. Charlene's pulse thundered. She had a choice. Take the shot and risk Jason's life. Or let the bastard go. The man's voice was smooth, calm. Put the gun down, Agent Brooks. Charlene's jaw clenched. Jason's eyes flicked between her and the sniper. He knew. He understood. And then, the sniper's finger twitched. Charlene had no choice. She dropped her weapon. The man's smile widened. Smart woman. He took a step back. Then another. Charlene's fingers twitched, rage boiling in her veins. The man stopped at the edge of the destruction, tilting his head. This isn't over. And then, he disappeared into the shadows. The sniper vanished. Charlene stood frozen, fists clenched. Jason exhaled. That could have gone worse. Charlene didn't respond. Because she knew. This wasn't a victory. It was just the beginning. The warehouse yard was eerily quiet now, the thick smoke from the explosion curling into the night sky. Charlene clenched her fists, her body humming with adrenaline, rage boiling beneath her skin. The bastard had escaped. Jason exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. Well, that was intense. Charlene turned to him, eyes still sharp. You almost died. Jason smirked. Yeah, but I didn't. Charlene wasn't in the mood for jokes. Not now. Not when they had come so close to bringing everything down, only for the man at the top to slip through their fingers. Reeds groaned, shifting beside her. As much as I love a good action movie moment, I think I need a hospital. Charlene snapped back to reality. Right. Reeds was still hurt. She grabbed his arm, helping him up. We'll get you patched up. Let's move before more of their people show up. Jason glanced at the destruction around them. The bodies of their enemies either unconscious or groaning in pain. Yeah, something tells me the cops are going to have some questions about this. Charlene didn't care. Let them come. For now, they needed to disappear. 2 hours later, safe house. Charlene stood near the window, arms crossed, watching the dark streets outside. The city was quiet, but her mind wasn't. They had saved Reeds. They had taken out most of the gunmen. But it still wasn't enough. The man in charge, the real mastermind, was still out there. Jason walked in, tossing a bag of ice toward her. For your ribs. I saw you take a hit earlier. Charlene caught it without looking. I'm fine. Jason snorted. You always say that, and you're always lying. Charlene didn't argue. She pressed the ice against her side, wincing slightly. Reed sat on the couch, bandaged up, but still looking rough. So what's next? Charlene didn't answer immediately. She was still thinking. Jason leaned against the wall. I'm guessing you're not going to let this go. Charlene's eyes flashed. Damn right I'm not. Jason smirked. Good. Because I just found something interesting. Charlene turned, intrigued. What? Jason held up his phone. I pulled surveillance footage from the area around the warehouse. You want to see how our mystery man got away? He pressed play. Charlene's breath caught as the footage showed the man, cool, calm, untouched, walking out of the warehouse yard and straight toward a waiting limousine. A limo. Not a getaway car. Not a hidden vehicle. A damn limousine. Jason raised a brow. Either this guy has serious confidence, or he's got people in high places. Charlene's stomach twisted. This wasn't just some dirty cops and drug dealers. This was bigger. Much bigger. Reeds groaned. I don't like that look on your face. Charlene ignored him. She turned to Jason. Can you track the car? Jason smirked. Already ahead of you. He pulled up another screen. Ran a plate scan. That limo is registered to a private security company. Charlene frowned. Security company? Jason nodded. Yeah, but here's the fun part. He clicked another tab. The company's owner popped up on the screen. Charlene's blood ran cold. Because she recognized the name. Raymond Calloway. A billionaire. A pharmaceutical CEO. And, as of this moment, the man pulling all the strings. Charlene stared at the screen, her hands curling into fists. Now it all made sense. The corruption. The drugs. The cover-ups. Owens and his dirty cops. They were just the muscle. Raymond Calloway? He was the boss. Jason exhaled. I'm guessing we just found our endgame. Charlene's jaw clenched. Yeah, and I'm about to tear it all down. Calloway's estate, 4 a.m. The mansion was massive, its lights glowing in the distance like something out of a movie. Security patrolled the perimeter, their movements precise and military-trained. Charlene crouched behind a row of bushes, binoculars in hand. Jason knelt beside her, checking his gear. This place is a damn fortress, Jason muttered. Charlene smirked. Good thing I like a challenge. Jason rolled his eyes. Remind me why we're doing this at 4 in the morning. Charlene didn't look away from the house. Because Calloway thinks he's untouchable. He won't expect us to move this fast. Jason let out a long sigh. You do realize if we get caught, we're screwed, right? Charlene finally turned to him, a glint in her eyes. That's why we don't get caught. Jason grinned. All right then, boss. What's the plan? Charlene's mind was already working, already mapping out every possible move. Step 1, get inside Da. Step 2, find evidence linking Calloway to Owens and the drug operation Da. Step 3, take the bastard down. It was dangerous. It was reckless. And Charlene didn't care. She was done playing defense. Now, it was her turn to strike. Inside the estate, Charlene moved like a shadow, her steps silent against the marble floors. Jason followed closely, his gun drawn. They had slipped past the perimeter guards easily enough, but now came the hard part, finding Calloway's secrets. Charlene knew men like him. He was too smart to keep physical evidence lying around. But digital evidence? That was another story. Jason nudged her. Office is upstairs. Charlene nodded. Let's move. They crept up the grand staircase, their movements quiet, their eyes scanning for any signs of trouble. The hallway was empty. Too empty. Charlene's gut twisted. Something wasn't right. Then, a beep, followed by a red laser flashed across the hall. Jason cursed. Tripwires. Asterisk asterisk. Charlene's pulse quickened. We set off an alarm? Jason shook his head. Not yet. But if we move wrong, we're toast. Charlene exhaled sharply. They needed a new plan. Fast. Then, a voice echoed through hidden speakers. Calm. Amused. You really should have stayed out of this, Agent Brooks. Charlene's breath hitched. She knew that voice. Raymond Calloway. He knew they were here. And before Charlene could react, the lights cut out. A second later, the alarms blared. And from down the hall, footsteps. Lots of them. Coming fast. Jason swore. Well, we're screwed. Charlene's eyes gleamed in the darkness. No. She cocked her gun. We fight. The alarms screamed through the mansion, red lights flashing along the corridors. Heavy footsteps pounded against the marble floors, getting closer. Charlene gritted her teeth, pressing her back against the wall. Jason crouched beside her, gun drawn. "How many?" he whispered. Charlene listened. "At least 6. Jason exhaled. "6? All right, easy enough." Charlene shot him a look. "Try 12. Jason groaned. "Okay, slightly less easy." The footsteps were closing in. They didn't have much time. Charlene's mind worked fast. "We need to split up." Jason frowned. "And why would we do that?" "I need to get to Calloway's office," Charlene said. "You hold them off." Jason gave her a flat look. "Oh, sure. I'll just take on a dozen heavily armed guards while you go sightseeing." Charlene smirked. "You're good at distractions." Jason sighed. "You owe me for this." Charlene didn't answer. Because she was already moving. The first wave hits. Jason barely had time to react before the first guard rounded the corner. The guy was fast, gun raised, finger on the trigger. Jason was faster. Bang. The shot hit the guard square in the chest, dropping him instantly. But that was just one. More were coming. Jason ducked into an empty side room, slamming the door behind him. "Okay, Jason," he muttered to himself. "This is fine. This is totally fine." A voice crackled in his earpiece. "You still breathing?" Jason smirked. "Yeah, but you better hurry, 'cause I don't plan on dying in a rich dude's guest room." Charlene's voice was calm. "Keep them busy." Jason sighed, rolling his shoulders. "Right. Distract the killers. No problem." Then, he kicked open the door and opened fire. Charlene's mission: find the evidence. Charlene moved fast, slipping through the halls like a ghost. She knew she didn't have long. Jason could hold his own, but not forever. She needed proof. Something that linked Calloway to the dirty cops, the drug smuggling, all of it. Her heart pounded as she reached the door to his office. Locked. Of course. Charlene pulled out her lockpick set, working quickly. One pin, too. Click. The door swung open. Charlene slipped inside, shutting it behind her. The office was massive. A sleek desk sat in the center, the walls lined with expensive bookshelves. But Charlene wasn't here for decoration. She needed Calloway's real secrets. Her eyes landed on the laptop sitting on his desk. Bingo. She powered it on, heart racing. If Calloway had anything incriminating, it would be in here. She plugged in a flash drive, fingers moving fast over the keyboard. Files transferred, 1%, 2%. A noise outside. Charlene froze. Someone was coming. Jason's last stand. Jason ducked behind an overturned table as bullets ripped through the walls. This was bad. Really bad. He was outnumbered, pinned down, and running out of ammo. Charlene's voice crackled through his earpiece. "I need 2 more minutes." Jason exhaled. "Char, I love you like a sister, but I do not have 2 minutes." A grenade landed near his feet. Jason blinked. "Okay, definitely don't have 2 minutes." He grabbed the grenade, yanked the pin, and threw it back. The explosion rocked the hallway. Jason didn't stop to admire his work. He ran. Charlene needed time. And he'd buy it. Even if it killed him. Charlene versus the suit. Charlene didn't turn when the office door clicked open. She didn't need to. She already knew who it was. Raymond Calloway. Calm. Smiling. A man who thought he was in control. "Agent Brooks," he said smoothly, stepping inside. "I expected you earlier." Charlene kept her gun aimed at the laptop. "Nice place." Calloway chuckled. "Shame you won't be leaving it alive." Charlene smirked. "Funny. I was about to say the same thing to you." Calloway sighed. "You think you've won?" Charlene didn't answer. She just glanced at the screen. Files transferred, 99%, 100%. Bingo. She grabbed the flash drive and spun around, gun raised. Calloway smiled. Then, he snapped his fingers, and the door behind him burst open. 2 huge guards stormed in, guns aimed at Charlene's head. Calloway sighed. "I really hoped you were smarter than this." Charlene's pulse pounded. She could shoot Calloway right now. End it. But she'd never make it out alive. For the first time tonight, she was trapped. Calloway grinned. "Put the gun down, Agent Brooks." Charlene exhaled and dropped it. The guard stepped forward, grabbing her arms. Calloway smirked. "Good girl." Then he leaned in and whispered, "You just lost." Charlene grinned and whispered back, "Did I?" Then, boom. A gunshot shattered the window behind them. The guard spun around, but it was too late. Jason. Sniper rifle. Calloway barely had time to react before Charlene broke free. She grabbed one of the guard's guns and fired point blank. Bang! Bang! Both men hit the floor. Calloway stumbled back, eyes wide. No! Charlene grabbed his collar, shoving him against the wall. You lost, she hissed. Then, she cuffed him. Jason's voice crackled in her ear. You good? Charlene exhaled. Yeah. She glanced at Calloway, a slow smile curling her lips. We got him. 1 week later, Charlene leaned back in her chair, watching the news. Billionaire Raymond Calloway arrested in shocking corruption scandal. Ties to police drug ring exposed. She smirked. Jason walked in, tossing a beer onto the table. So, we won. Charlene grinned. Damn right we did. Jason clinked his bottle against hers. So what now? Charlene exhaled. Now, she was going to enjoy this victory. At least, until the next fight. Because people like Calloway weren't the only ones out there. And Charlene? She was just getting started. Charlene took a slow sip from her beer, the cold fizz bubbling on her tongue as she watched the news report. The downfall of Raymond Calloway was everywhere. The FBI has confirmed that billionaire Raymond Calloway has been charged with multiple counts of conspiracy, racketeering, and drug trafficking. Sources indicate that Calloway was the mastermind behind a network of corrupt law enforcement officers who facilitated the distribution of narcotics throughout the city. Charlene smirked. Mission accomplished. Jason leaned against the counter, scrolling through his phone. Damn, they're roasting this guy online. He held up the screen, showing a Twitter feed flooded with hashtags. Hashtag Calloway arrested, hashtag justice served, hashtag corrupt cops exposed. Charlene shook her head, amused. Guess rich guys really don't like getting caught. Jason grinned. Oh, he's miserable. But I bet he's more pissed about losing his power than actually going to prison. Charlene knew he was right. Calloway wasn't just any criminal. He was a man who thought he was untouchable. A billionaire who bought his way out of everything. But not this time. This time, she took him down. Jason exhaled, setting his phone aside. So now what? Charlene leaned back, stretching her arms. Now? We let the feds handle Calloway. Jason raised a brow. And you really think it's over? Charlene didn't answer right away. Because, deep down, she knew. It wasn't over. Not yet. Calloway's holding cell, 3 a.m. The prison was quiet, the air thick with the scent of cold metal and concrete. Inside a dimly lit holding cell, Raymond Calloway sat alone. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't pacing. He was waiting. And then, a man entered. Tall, broad shoulders, wearing a sleek black suit. Calloway barely glanced up. Took you long enough. The man sat across from him, his face hidden in the shadows. You underestimated them. Calloway smirked. No, I underestimated her. The man said nothing. Calloway's smirk faded. How bad is it? The man leaned forward. Bad. The files they recovered? They didn't just expose you. They exposed everything. Calloway's jaw tightened. The man exhaled. The people above you? They're not happy. Calloway scoffed. Screw them. The man chuckled. You always were arrogant. Calloway leaned closer, his eyes dark. They want me dead? A pause. Then, the man smirked. No. Calloway frowned. The man continued. They don't want you dead, Raymond. He stood, straightening his tie. They want her dead. Calloway's smirk returned. The hit list. Charlene sat on her apartment balcony, letting the cool night air wash over her. For the first time in months, she felt calm. Her mission was complete. Calloway was behind bars. The corrupt cops had been exposed. She should have felt satisfied. But something still nagged at her. Her instincts told her this wasn't over. Jason walked out onto the balcony, hands in his pockets. You ever think about taking a break? Charlene smirked. I don't do breaks. Jason rolled his eyes. Figured. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. His expression changed. Charlene noticed immediately. What? Jason swallowed, his grip tightening on the phone. You might want to see this. He handed her the phone. Charlene looked at the screen. Her breath caught. It was an anonymous message. A single attachment. She opened it. And froze. A photo of her. Taken from outside her apartment. Charlene's blood ran cold. Then, the message popped up. Calloway was just the beginning. You're next. The assassin's move. A black SUV rolled down a dark alley, its headlights off. Inside sat 4 men, dressed in tactical gear, guns loaded. Their leader, a man with a scar over his left eye, checked his watch. She's home. The others nodded. We move in 5. They pulled their weapons. Their target? Charlene Brooks. And tonight, they were coming to kill her. Back at Charlene's apartment, Charlene's pulse pounded. Jason stood beside her, just as tense. They found you, he muttered. Charlene nodded. Yeah. Jason's grip tightened on his gun. Then we hit back first. Charlene's lips curled into a slow, dangerous smile. Damn right we do. Then, the power went out. Darkness swallowed the apartment. Charlene's muscles coiled. Jason whispered, "They're here." Charlene's eyes gleamed in the dark. Good. She cocked her gun. Let's give them a warm welcome. And just like that, the hunt began. The apartment was pitch black. Charlene's breathing was steady, but her pulse pounded. She knew what this was. A hit. Calloway's people had sent killers for her, and they were already inside. Jason moved beside her, silent as a shadow. He tapped her arm twice, a signal. They needed to move. Now, Charlene tightened her grip on her gun and took a slow step forward, her ears straining for sound. Then, a creak. Charlene reacted instantly. Bang. A bullet ripped through the darkness. A muffled grunt. A body hit the floor. One down. Jason exhaled. Well, so much for stealth. Charlene smirked. They were never getting out of here alive anyway. A second later, gunfire erupted. The assassins weren't playing games. Bullets tore through walls, shattering glass, sending wood splinters flying. Charlene and Jason dived for cover as the living room exploded with gunfire. Jason gritted his teeth. These guys aren't amateurs. Charlene reloaded. Good. I was getting bored. Then, the shooting stopped. Silence. Charlene frowned. That wasn't good. She peeked over the couch. Nothing. No movement. Jason exhaled. You think they? Before he could finish, something crashed through the window. A gas grenade. Charlene's eyes widened. Move, she shouted. They both bolted as the grenade exploded, filling the air with thick, choking smoke. Charlene's vision blurred. Tear gas. She gritted her teeth, forcing herself to push through it. Then, she heard it. Footsteps. Fast. Coming straight for her. She didn't think. She reacted. A shadow emerged from the smoke. Charlene spun, elbow up. Crack. The assassin stumbled back, stunned. Charlene didn't give him time to recover. She grabbed his wrist, twisted the gun from his grip, and slammed his head into the wall. He dropped instantly. Jason coughed from across the room. You good? Charlene wiped her eyes. Still breathing. Then, a whisper behind her. Too late. A knife sliced through the air, toward her throat. Charlene barely dodged in time. The blade sliced her shoulder instead. Pain flashed through her body, hot and sharp. But Charlene didn't stop. She spun, grabbing the assassin's wrist before he could strike again. He was fast. She was faster. She drove her knee into his gut, making him stumble. Then, a gunshot. The assassin's body jerked. He collapsed. Jason stood behind him, gun smoking. He smirked. You were taking too long. Charlene rolled her eyes, pressing a hand to her bleeding shoulder. You're welcome. Jason nodded toward the door. We need to get out of here before more show up. Charlene agreed. They had taken out 3, but she knew there had been 4. One was missing. Her instincts screamed at her. Something was wrong. Then, she heard it. A click. She barely had time to react before. Boom. An explosion ripped through the apartment. Charlene was thrown back. She hit the floor hard, her ears ringing. Smoke and fire filled the room. Her vision blurred. Then, a hand grabbed her, dragging her. A voice, low and cold. Calloway sends his regards. Charlene struggled. Fought. But she was weak. Dazed. The assassin yanked her toward the open window. He was going to throw her out. Charlene's pulse spiked. Her hands searched for a weapon, anything. Then, Jason tackled him. Both men crashed into the floor. Charlene gasped, trying to pull herself up. The assassin recovered fast. He pulled a knife, lunging at Jason. Charlene's eyes widened. No. She grabbed her gun. The assassin's blade was inches from Jason's throat. Charlene fired. Bang. The assassin's body jerked. He collapsed. Jason exhaled, pushing the body off him. He looked at Charlene. I'm gonna assume that was on purpose. Charlene gave him a tired smirk. Mostly. Jason groaned, sitting up. You good? Charlene touched her bleeding shoulder. Been better. She glanced around. The apartment was destroyed. Smoke. Fire. Bullet holes. They couldn't stay here. Charlene stood, shaky but determined. We need to move. Jason sighed. Yeah, no argument there. Charlene grabbed a bag of emergency supplies from the closet. Jason frowned. Where are we going? Charlene's jaw tightened. We end this. Tonight. Jason raised a brow. And how exactly do we do that? Charlene turned to him, her eyes cold. We pay Calloway a visit. Jason's smirk faded. Char, he's locked up, surrounded by security. Charlene grabbed her gun, checking the ammo. Then we break in. Jason blinked. You're serious? Charlene's expression was deadly. He started this. She locked the magazine in place. I'm going to finish it. Jason exhaled. Well, hell, might as well go all in. Charlene smirked. Good. Because we're taking him down. She holstered her weapon, grabbed her keys, and turned toward the door. And with that, the final hunt began. The night air was thick, heavy with the scent of smoke and burnt gunpowder as Charlene drove fast through the empty streets. The SUV's engine growled beneath her hands, but her mind was sharper, focused. Jason sat in the passenger seat, reloading his gun. His face was unreadable, but Charlene knew him well enough to recognize the tension in his posture. This is insane, he muttered, snapping the magazine in place. Charlene didn't take her eyes off the road. You're still here. Jason let out a slow breath. Yeah, well, if we're going to break into a federal holding facility to confront a billionaire crime boss, I'd rather not let you do it alone. Charlene smirked. Good answer. Jason gave her a dry look. And what's the actual plan, by the way? Charlene's grip tightened on the wheel. We get to Calloway before his people do. Jason frowned. You think they'll make a move? Charlene knew they would. The assassins at her apartment weren't sent to scare her. They were sent to eliminate her. And if Calloway was expendable in their eyes, too, then someone would be cleaning up loose ends tonight. Jason exhaled. All right, so we break into a secure government facility, grab a billionaire, and what? Walk him out the front door. Charlene's lips curled into a slow, dangerous smile. Something like that. Jason groaned. I hate that look. Charlene pressed the gas pedal. Then buckle up. Federal holding facility, 2:45 a.m. The prison loomed in the distance, surrounded by thick concrete walls and armed guards. Spotlights swept the perimeter, and cameras covered every inch of the facility. Jason whistled low. Yeah, real easy break-in. Charlene parked the SUV a few blocks away. We're not going through the front. Jason rolled his eyes. Oh, thank God. Charlene pulled out a blueprint of the facility, unfolding it across the dashboard. She tapped a section on the map. Delivery entrance. Minimal guards. No cameras inside. Jason raised a brow. And how exactly do we get inside without being shot? Charlene smirked. Simple. 20 minutes later, inside the facility. Charlene adjusted her stolen guard uniform, keeping her head low as she walked through the dimly lit corridors. Jason walked beside her, equally disguised, his posture stiff. This is ridiculous, he muttered under his breath. Charlene nudged him. Relax. Jason exhaled. Relax? Char, we're walking through a federal prison in stolen uniforms. Charlene smirked. And yet, no one stopped us. Jason muttered something under his breath, but kept moving. The holding cells were up ahead. Charlene's pulse quickened. She needed to get to Calloway before they did. Then, a voice. Hey, you two. Charlene stiffened. A guard was walking toward them, his hand hovering near his holster. Jason shot Charlene a look. What now? Charlene turned to the guard, forcing a calm expression. Prisoner transfer, she said smoothly. Orders from upstairs. The guard frowned. I didn't hear about a transfer. Charlene tilted her head. Oh, you sure? Because I'd hate to tell your boss you slowed down a direct order. The guard hesitated. Then, he grumbled. Fine, get it done fast. Charlene nodded, keeping her stride steady as they walked past. Jason exhaled. Okay, that was scary. Charlene smirked. You doubt me. Jason scoffed. Always. They rounded the corner. And there was Calloway's cell. Charlene's eyes locked onto him. He sat on a metal cot, hands cuffed, looking infuriatingly relaxed, as if he was waiting for them. Charlene stepped forward, gripping the bars. Hello, Raymond. Calloway looked up, a slow smile stretching across his face. Well, this is a surprise. Calloway's last gamble. Charlene didn't waste time. You tried to have me killed. Calloway sighed. Not exactly. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. Jason scoffed. Yeah? Your people did a real bad job then. Calloway smirked. That's because they weren't my people. Charlene's eyes narrowed. What? Calloway leaned forward, his voice lowering. There's someone bigger than me, Brooks. Someone who doesn't like attention. And right now, your little investigation is giving them a lot of it. Charlene's pulse spiked. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Calloway studied her. I give it another 12 hours before they send real professionals after you. Jason muttered. Oh great. We get even worse assassins now. Charlene ignored him. Why should I believe you? Calloway chuckled. Because I want to live. Charlene clenched her jaw. He wasn't lying. Jason crossed his arms. So let me guess. You help us, and in return, we get you out of here. Calloway's grin widened. Smart man. Charlene's stomach twisted. She hated this. But if Calloway was telling the truth, then she wasn't just up against dirty cops and corrupt businessmen. She was up against something bigger. Something worse. Charlene exhaled. You're coming with us. Jason groaned. God, I knew you were going to say that. Charlene smirked. Let's move. She pulled out a stolen keycard, swiping it through the lock. The cell door clicked open. Calloway stepped out, rolling his shoulders. Lead the way, Agent Brooks. Charlene turned, her instincts screaming that this was a terrible idea. But she had no choice. They started moving. Then, a siren blared. A robotic voice echoed through the halls. Unauthorized prisoner release detected. Charlene's stomach dropped. Jason cursed. Great. Guess we're doing this the hard way. Charlene cocked her gun. I wouldn't have it any other way. Then, the entire facility went into lockdown. Heavy doors slammed shut. Guards came running. And just like that, the escape turned into a war zone. The blaring sirens turned the prison into a battlefield. Charlene's instincts screamed move, now. The red emergency lights cast eerie shadows across the hallways as guards stormed toward them, guns drawn. Jason muttered, so, Plan B. Charlene exhaled sharply. Plan B is to survive. Calloway grinned. I like that plan. Charlene shoved him forward. Shut up and run. The escape. They sprinted through the facility, weaving between metal doors and security checkpoints. Jason fired over his shoulder, forcing the guards to take cover. Charlene checked her ammo. Half a clip left. Not enough. She spotted a maintenance hallway ahead and shoved Calloway inside. Jason followed, slamming the door shut behind them. Charlene jammed a chair under the handle. Bang! The guard slammed against the door. Charlene's mind raced. They needed an exit. Calloway smirked. You do realize there's no way out of here. Charlene ignored him, scanning the room. Then, she found it. A vent. She turned to Jason. Think you can fit? Jason gave her a flat look. I'm not a damn action hero, Char. Charlene smirked. Try. Jason grumbled, but climbed in. Charlene followed, dragging Calloway in behind her. The metal creaked under their weight as they crawled forward. Behind them, the guards broke through. Find them, a voice shouted. Charlene kept moving, her pulse hammering. They weren't out yet. Then, a new voice echoed through the facility. Cold. Commanding. We have a breach in Block C. Deploy kill squads. No survivors. Charlene froze. That wasn't a guard. That was someone else. Someone deadly. Jason whispered. Oh great, they have a hit squad now? Charlene gritted her teeth. They needed to move. Fast. The rooftop battle. They emerged from the vents onto the rooftop. Cold air hit Charlene's skin as she scanned the skyline. The city glowed in the distance. But the real problem? A helicopter was waiting. Not for them. For Calloway. A team of 6 heavily armed mercenaries stood near the chopper, weapons ready. One of them, a tall man in a sleek black suit, smirked when he saw them. Charlene's stomach twisted. She knew who he was. Vincent Drake. A professional fixer. A man who cleaned up loose ends for people like Calloway. Drake's voice was smooth. Agent Brooks. You're persistent. Charlene cocked her gun. You have no idea. Drake chuckled. You're outnumbered. Outgunned. He glanced at Calloway. Our employer doesn't appreciate mistakes. So we're here to clean things up. Calloway paled. Wait, what? Drake turned to his men. Kill them. The gunfight erupted instantly. Charlene dived behind a metal vent as bullets whizzed past. Jason returned fire, dropping one mercenary. Calloway ducked, panicking. I thought they were here to save me. Charlene smirked. Guess you're not as important as you thought. Drake moved fast. Too fast. He rolled behind cover, reloading smoothly. Charlene locked eyes with him. She only had one shot to end this. Then, Drake made a mistake. He stepped out of cover too soon. Charlene fired. Bang. Drake stumbled back, clutching his side. His eyes widened. Then he collapsed. The remaining mercenaries hesitated. Charlene didn't. She grabbed Calloway by the collar and shoved him forward. Your ride's here, she smirked. The mercenaries froze. Jason grinned. Smart. Drake's men weren't loyal. They were paid. And with Drake dead, there was no paycheck left. The mercenaries lowered their weapons. Charlene grabbed Jason's arm. Run. They sprinted toward the edge of the roof. A guard fired one last shot. Charlene leaped. The building dropped away beneath them. She landed hard on a nearby fire escape, rolling to absorb the impact. Jason hit the ground beside her, groaning. Charlene exhaled, heart racing. Behind them, the mercenaries took Calloway into the helicopter. It lifted off, disappearing into the night. Jason blinked. Did we just give them Calloway? Charlene smirked. He was dead either way. Jason let out a slow whistle. Damn, Char. That's cold. Charlene shrugged. He had it coming. 1 week later, Charlene stood on her apartment balcony, sipping coffee as the morning news played. Raymond Calloway, presumed dead. His body was never recovered after an alleged prison escape gone wrong. Investigators suspect foul play. Charlene smirked. Jason walked out, holding his own coffee. So what now? Charlene exhaled. Now. She set her coffee down. We see who else is still out there. Jason raised a brow. You're not done. Charlene's smile was sharp. Not even close. Then, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She answered. Brooks. A deep voice spoke. You don't know me, Agent Brooks. But I know you. Charlene's pulse quickened. The voice continued. You took down Calloway. A pause. Now let's see if you can survive what comes next. Click. The call ended. Charlene exhaled, a slow smile forming. Jason frowned. Something wrong. Charlene's eyes gleamed. No. She grabbed her gun. Something's finally getting interesting. The sun rose over the city, casting long golden shadows across the streets below. Charlene leaned against her apartment's balcony railing, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The war she had fought, the war against corruption, lies, and power, had left its scars. But for the first time in a long while, she felt at peace. Calloway was gone. His empire? Crumbled. The corrupt cops who framed her? Exposed, fired, and facing trial. And yet, the fight wasn't over. Charlene knew that. People like Calloway weren't the only ones pulling strings. There were others, bigger, more dangerous. The unknown caller's words still echoed in her mind. Now let's see if you can survive what comes next. A warning. A challenge. Charlene smirked, rolling her shoulders. Let them come. She had fought too hard to back down now. Jason stepped onto the balcony, sipping his coffee. You gonna tell me what that phone call was about? Charlene glanced at him. Just another cockroach trying to crawl out of the shadows. Jason sighed. Great. More bad guys. Just what I wanted. Charlene chuckled. You can retire if you want. Jason gave her a look. And let you have all the fun? Hell no. Charlene shook her head, smiling. She turned back to the city. The battle had been won. Justice had been served. But the war? It was just getting started. And Charlene Brooks? She was ready.